Hello and welcome to, I'm going to say, part 2 of my first video log. I made a much longer part 1 that I'm probably going to break up into segments, and everything I'm about to say here is in that, so I'm still trying to figure out the whole video system and YouTube system. This is my first time ever making any kind of video, so forgive all the inconsistencies and lack of ability. So I'm going to try and stay on point this time and stick to the message. I want to focus on a basic understanding and way of viewing the world that I find valuable. This is something that I think I've more or less always tried to do as I've developed as a person. Was probably some good advice in my younger life. Couldn't tell you where it came from, but it's about identifying the world around you and how that can be negative, and how that negative impact is nearly always going to be upon you. So if you want to succeed at what you're doing, if you want to make the most of the people around you, the world around you, the skills you're learning, the hobbies you're into, and even just the idle things you're doing, just playing around on the computer, messing around on Facebook, I don't know, looking at pictures, it doesn't matter. But if you want to take the most from that and really add to your own consciousness, your own awareness of the world, and your own understanding of how things work, my challenge to you would be to try and spend as much time describing rather than identifying anything that you encounter. The example I'm going to use to make it pretty simple and pretty straightforward, and I think everyone can relate to, is identifying people. So in the main scenario here, you encounter somebody, you have a group of friends or whatever, and you encounter a new person in that group of friends, and the first thing people are going to do is, as soon as that person's gone, is you're going to debrief. You're going to talk about that person, or a lot of people do this, guys and girls both. You're going to debrief and you're going to discuss that person. Now the trap that everybody wants to fall into, I want to fall into, everybody wants to fall into, is they want to identify that person. So they want to go, that Brad, he's such an asshole. Or not even such an asshole, but just, yeah, he's kind of an asshole. That Cindy, she's a bitch, or she's a slut. There's all kinds of motivations for why you pick the identifier. It's always based on some insecurity, You're calling the person an asshole honestly because you didn't have the diplomatic means to deal with their personality. You're calling that girl a slut probably because you're insecure about your own sexuality, or that girl a bitch, for the same reason as the asshole. It's usually based on an insecurity, but that's kind of irrelevant, because I think you can help even overcome your own insecurities and just sort of bypass your own insecurities, whether or not they exist, by using descriptions rather than identifiers. So rather than identifying Brad as an asshole, why not spend just the extra 30 seconds, the extra minute, whatever it takes, and maybe just describe a bit of Brad's behavior. And maybe describe what is a consequence of that, instead of just saying, I don't like this behavior even. So, the conversation might go something like this. Instead of going, that Brad, yeah, he's kind of an asshole, yeah, he's an asshole. And all of a sudden, all of you now have these barriers, these walls about Brad, and every time you meet him, you're going to sort of just shovel him into that little corner, and you've got this little box in your head, and it's the asshole box, and he just lives in there, and he's never really going to escape. And you're not going to make the most of Brad in your life, and nobody is. So you've now cornered Brad, and you've cornered yourself. You've probably lost a new friend, and there's no real benefit to putting Brad in the asshole box, to be honest. It doesn't save you from anything. It's not going to stop him being an asshole. It's probably going to make it worse. However, if the conversation goes something a little more like, you talk, afterwards, and Brad, and what did you think of that guy? And you can go, yeah, I don't know. It was, he was a little difficult to get along with. Like, we were talking, and he was kind of rude. He was kind of abrasive. He was in your face, and he's talking about things that I wasn't comfortable with. His sense of humor is kind of like crude or something. You can say those things, and those are still even better. What's even better is putting less impact on, less negative impact or positive impact on it, really, and just discussing, like, yeah, his sense of humor is really, is really in your face, and he doesn't seem to have a lot of reservations about what he says. So he's probably not, you could say he's probably not somebody, I'm gonna hang out, bring to meet my parents. He's not somebody I'm gonna, hang around at work if you work in a corporate environment. He's not somebody I'm gonna bring to a work function or whatever. So and now all of a sudden in your head, what you've done is you've taken Brad from this asshole box. You've taken Brad from this asshole box, and you just sort of released him into your brain. And now instead of having Brad, asshole, you have Brad, and then some sort of connections to the world. And what you see is that there's a negative connection to your corporate life, to maybe your family life, to people that are sensitive for whatever reason. So you understand that that's sort of like a place Brad shouldn't go. But you maybe have a positive understanding of, like, places Brad might be really fun. There might be some place you want to go where you're like, oh man, I don't want to deal with a social setting, and it's going to be all like uncomfortable, and I don't want to have to take all this heat. And all of a sudden you're like, what would actually be great is Brad, because that guy, like, he never shuts up, and he's going to say all kinds of dumb shit. And he's totally going to make it fun and interesting, and instead of being stuck in maybe some awkward party that you don't really want to be at, and you've got dragged out, all of a sudden you've got Brad there, and he's just messing with everybody, and, it might actually turn into be a fun time, because he could make something more interesting or more entertaining, and maybe some of you would see that as a negative thing, like you're using Brad, but in my view of the world, you're just using everybody for everything. Everybody is using everything. You're using yourself. Everybody else is using you. And I still think it's much more positive, and it gives you so many more options and so many powers as a person to be describing this Brad character rather than identifying. So I would challenge you to try and do the same thing with every aspect of your life. It's a slow process, but it's a good place to start is with people. Instead of hating on people, especially, and sometimes over liking people, like even if it's a celebrity, instead of going, that person's awesome, maybe just describe some of the things you like about them. Oh, great singer, totally talented, I'd love to hear them live or talk to them some more. They're, very interesting person. All of a sudden it gives you options. And as a species, our power, our strength, the thing that made us survive and evolve to be, and the thing we evolved to become such a dominant species, is knowledge. It's not our ability to make social categorizations or whatever. A thing that made us powerful and that can make us so much more powerful, help us ascend to an even better place, is more knowledge and more understanding. So don't take away knowledge. Don't take away understanding from yourself. Don't limit the people in your life by putting them in little boxes that they can't escape from. Because then the thing is, they don't live in that box. They live in the real world. The box is in your mind. So all you've done is removed a multifaceted, interesting thing, a person, an entity, with all kinds of uses and abilities and resources and ways of interacting, and you've thrown it all away and you've said, fuck it. I'd rather just look at that person and think one word. Well, challenge yourself. Give 30 seconds. And, the next time you see that person, you might have a really cool idea of where they might fit in, or where you might find something really fun to do with that person, or something that might be more interesting with that person. Maybe this slutty chick you just met would love your friend. Your friend who really needs to get laid. And all of a sudden, slutty's not a bad thing. It's a thing that's helping you and helping cheer up your friend's day who's been having a shitty dry spell. So that's my challenge, is we'll start with people. It's the easiest place to start because it's the thing we think about the most. Think about describing the people in your life. Think about describing their actions in relevance to what it could mean or what it could be for, and try not to identify them or put them in boxes, because those boxes will they'll just trap you. You're going to end up being trapped with a whole bunch of people as boxes, and you're going to be bored, you're going to be hateful, and you're not going to be able to make the most of life. So there you go.